Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Wandering Ukie Cheese Café. So, just like in the beginning of my vacation 2025 when I did a walk along Jarry Street East, I got a similar idea today and thought I could go along Sherbrooke Street East from downtown up into the East End. It's a route that I've done before once, and I know that if I walk along that street, I'm going to be covering several episodes, several neighborhoods I've covered on past episodes, and it can kind of give you a bit of a geography lesson of where I've head up, where I've been before, and maybe share some stories along the way. So I'm right here around Jean Street, and I'm going to be heading north until I get to Sherbrooke. So before we continue on, here's my suggestion for you. Click that subscribe button below and put your notification bell on, because that way, if there's a new video to view, you're going to get a pop-up on your phone. Oh, and give me a like too, because the more likes I get, the more these videos are promoted across YouTube. So let's get started. Right in back of me is one of the main things I remember from Sherbrooke around my early days of discovering microbreweries, Benelux. There's two locations that I know of. This one here, it's on the corner of Sherbrooke West and Jean Mas, and then the other one that's in Verdun on Wellington Street in an old Bank of Montreal building that looked like it was refurbished. Now, speaking of architecture, you do have this building, which looks like it's got a lot of, Carte des Sciences, so like a science center. I'm guessing that there's a lot of door columns, so they kept some of the old architecture around here. But of course, this is also, I think, around the Golden Square Mile neighborhood of Montreal, where there used to be a lot of mansions that were built, but then over time they got reconverted to other stuff like, I guess, apartment buildings. There could have also been some buildings that were preserved by McGill, and etc. So I believe this is like somewhere borderline between Ville Marie, which is part of the downtown borough, and the Plateau Mont-Royal, so you get a bit of both sides. We've now hit up Saint Laurent Boulevard, so this is going to be the divided line between the east and west sides of the streets. So that means that now once I cross this, I'll officially be starting along Sherbrooke Street East. I'm not going to send any cards for some of my wanders around here, because I've covered this countless times on a channel, whether it's my discoveries of trying to find new bars, restaurants, and cafes here, locating the apartments that my grandfathers were living in before they lived in the areas I knew about, and etc. That'll be, well, no need to save for another time, because like I said, I've already done that a number of times. This is going to be a new route with some brand new eyes. But if you want to know how you can tell you're in the Plateau Mont-Royal area of Montreal, it's usually just by this architecture that you see over here. So these are all homes, apartments, and such that have a very Victorian design. And I feel like a lot of those are built around the 1800s into the early 1900s, up into the 20th century. So it's a stacked row housing like you would find all across the city, but big difference, it's all a little bit more intricate in design, and it doesn't have just like rows and rows of plain brown brick houses like you find around the rest of residential Montreal. You probably will still have some of those spiral staircases, which are, well, they're distinct, but probably a pain in the ass to go up and down with, especially if you need to move furniture around. I'm now coming on to one of the major streets around Montreal that I've shown off a number of times, St. Denis Street. So let's say from the Maisonneuve Boulevard up until Laurier Avenue, you're going to find that there's a lot of shops, restaurants, and a whole bunch of boutiques around there. And it's pretty big for the plateau, but one thing I could point the attention to is south from here. If you go between Sherbrooke and the Maisonneuve, that's a part of town that's known as the Latin Quarter. So it's kind of a way to have a nightlife close to UQAM and Cégep du Vieux-Montréal. I did cover that before, so I'm not going to go much further in detail. So I'm going to suggest clicking on the card in the top right corner, and you can revisit that episode that I did back in April, actually also on one of my vacations. But if you don't want to do that, I'll just keep going eastward and seeing what else is around.
There's no reason to believe
More of that same Victorian architecture around here, sign that I'm still within the plateau. I mentioned earlier in the video that I did this walk like once in my lifetime, and I want to say it was back in my HMV days, like well over a decade ago. And I think it was a winter time, and I just decided, let's go from Place des Arts all the way up to the Langelier metro station. But I guess it's kind of in a wanderous mood just to test my limits. And this was before I was trying to explore around the city for very specific stuff. So I guess, like I said, I'm going to be looking at this through fresh eyes. Oh, pizza, desi, and bar. Nice looking quaint little terrace. So maybe I should give it a shot one of these days. Atatakan Street, formerly Amherst Street. So if I was to go south around here, I'd be getting to the borough that's known as the Centre Sud. And one thing I could say is that there is a pretty nice sushi restaurant I was hitting up with a couple of friends over the years, Ukie Sushi. Haven't documented it yet on the channel, but maybe one day I could do a solo visit. But what I could do is I can draw your attention right across the street from me, Parc La Fontaine Park, one of the major larger parks around the city. It's a bit like Maisonneuve Park, a little bit like Jarry Park, so large, it's got a nice lake in the center. I know I covered this on the channel a while back, and that was probably when I was walking around here for Saint Jean weekend in June 2022, and I'll put a card in the top right corner for you and you can watch that one. But I could say that this was one of my regular routes too. Like back when I would start around the plateau, one of my routes I could take was either down Rachel, eventually to Saint Denis to get into Old Montreal, or I just walk through this park here and then make my way back down to the Centre Sud. Almost at the end of the park, because once you get to the border of Papineau Avenue, that's when La Fontaine Park ends. And I feel like I'm going to be getting very close to the Hochelaga-Maisonneuve part of town very soon. But if you're to go south around here, this is actually where you can get to Ontario Street and eventually the Jacques-Cartier Bridge in case you're going to be getting off the island. I've walked the bridge before, and I'm not going to put a card for that because I know I've shown it off last time. But I can say that in terms of this part of Hochelaga, I know I've done that when I was trying to look for the areas where my grandmother was living when she first came to Canada. So Hochelaga, after the plateau, and then eventually the Rosemont. That was a pretty big project I did about 2 years ago, so I'll put a card in the top right corner for you if you want to revisit that one. So yeah, that's all I can say about that. On with the show. Alright, Delorme Avenue East. Not East, Delorme Avenue. The first street to be hitting if you're going to be going north from the Jacques-Cartier Bridge, and like I've said, where we drive with my dad to get to my grandmother's in Rosemont, so this part of town I'm definitely familiar with. Quite a scorcher over here, but things that I do for the sake of a vlog. So this park that's across the street from me is Baldwin Park. So it means I'm probably close to Baldwin, but hard for me to say because I don't remember all of the names of these parks as I was passing along here. I had to look it up on Google Maps just so I could get a sense of my geography. Whew. Still seeing some of the elaborate decor for the outside of the house, so I feel like I'm still within the plateau, but I could be wrong about that. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. But what I do know is that it is rush hour now because, as you can tell, there is a lot of traffic coming along over here, so it means people are going from work right now. It is 3 p.m. as I'm recording this, which kind of makes sense. Just rare that I'm walking along this street when it's so busy at rush hour. But then again, I'm not really out at this time of the day unless I'm on a day off. Well, I don't know if it was obvious because of the shot, but if you're to looking back at me, The Olympic Stadium is like within the background now, so that means I'm getting very close to the Rosemont Petit Patrie part of it, but I'll explain the division afterwards. Okay, so architecturally, I'm now probably still within Hochelaga, borderline Rosemont, because I could tell just by the building structures here that I know quite well around my grandmother's old neighborhood, so very similar style. And I'm getting very close to probably part of Sherbrooke that's not too far from a microbrewery, but I ain't gonna be brewing myself right now. The Maisonneuve shopping center, or Centre Commercial Maisonneuve. If I was to go north along there, which is like a small strip mall, I'll eventually get to Rachel Street, and as a result, the Angus part of Rosemont, where I've hit up in the past for La Chop Angus, and also La Baraque. But the microbrewery in Hochelaga I was talking about, that's actually going to be south, because if I go south along Moreau, eventually onto Hochelaga Street near Plateau Metro, that's where the Mutoid microbrewery is, which is all rock themed, metal themed, and it's something that kind of speaks to me. I haven't gone there since last September, so maybe since it's almost been a year, eventually I should just pay it a visit once more. Another nice looking church over here that's a little more unique compared to some of the other ones I've seen in La Petite Patrie. So this is Davidson Street that I just passed by, which means if I was to continue north along that street and get to Rachel, it becomes Saint Michel Boulevard, and that's the route that bus number 67 would be taken if I was to be doing a wander into town to go visit my babcia back then. This was, when I was trying to go by bus on my own or even with the family after my dad died. So yeah, it's always nice to kind of look back, see some of these streets again, get transported back to an older time. Innocent days, you know. You know, seems like that the south side of the street is not as shady as I was expecting it to be. I think I was just choosing that because logistically it made the most sense to stick around here. But had I gone to the north part, then maybe that would have given me a little bit more coverage. But I'm on Nicolette Street here, which means I should be approaching Peanut very soon. And that's going to be one of the starting points of two of the big parks on the east end of Montreal. I've covered that before, so we'll look at it in 1 second, so stick around for now. Oh man, so much heat right now. I feel like, now that I'm thinking about it, this is giving me flashbacks to summertime when I was in Cégep, university, in between jobs. Like, whenever I do a random wander around Montreal, and I think it was always around the East End, like I had said countless times on the channel, I'm starting to feel it now. So I think the good news is that if I go south along here, I can get inside the Olympic Park, and there'll be a place to go grab a coffee, and I feel like some water fountains so I can refill my water. Because I think I had about like a good 12 ounces, if not 16, because I did have to do a small refill when I was on the road, and I'm definitely gonna need some more hydration very soon. So, yeah, I made up my mind. I'm taking an intermission. So here I am. Had myself a shot of espresso, and I'm a little bit more hydrated now since I had some time to rest and get a few glasses of water for myself and refill my bottle. I didn't show off the place, but it's called L'Espace Vego, which is like a vegan cafe that also serves a regular milk too, so I guess they cater to anyone here since it is a touristy area. And that cafe was actually attached to the Planetarium of Montreal. That's one thing about the Olympic Park, is that you got the planetarium, you got the biodome. Even at the Maisonneuve Park just across the street, you got botanical gardens and the insectarium, so there's quite a bit to see over here. And I'm getting out of the woods here near Saputo Stadium, going on to Ville Street, and I'm going to continue my journey onto Sherbrooke Street. And the good news is that I only have a little bit left to go, but in case I get tired or too hot, I do have a lot of transport to take back on the way home. Palm. That's a bakery for a lot of bread you find in grocery stores here, but I didn't realize until recently what that the acronym was for. Pride of Montreal. The more you know. Now that is some unique architecture around this part of the city. What you're looking at over there, the ones that look like pyramids, is within what's called the Olympic Village. Back when we were hosting the Olympics in 1976, those apartments were built as a way to kind of house all the athletes that were competing in the sports at around that time. And I think they're now like apartments, condos or such, so that is still going to good use. It stands out, but because of the way it's designed, I kind of wonder how much ice builds up on there over the winter. I don't know, just something you kind of have to think about. I am now crossing along L'Assomption Boulevard. So if I was to go further north, then eventually I would get into New Rosemont and eventually into St. Leonard that I've covered before. But if I was to go south, then I know there's one microbrewery that I know of that I want to visit one of these days, L'Avant-Garde. I've had their stuff before and it seems like it's very like artsy looking. Dang trailers. Artsy looking cans. And I feel like that's the furthest east of microbrewery I could find around here on the island of Montreal. But we'll see if I do a visit later on. What I do know is that I believe that now that I passed L'Assomption, I am within the Mercier area, about Mercier Hochelaga-Maisonneuve district. And Mercier is divided into two sectors. You got Mercier West, which used to be the Long Point town around here, and then Mercier East, that was formerly called Tétroville. And I was actually told that the very first Belle Province, Greasy Spoon restaurant that was opened up around Quebec, was actually in Tétroville. The second one was in St. Hubert in my part of town, so fun little bit of trivia here. So we're going to see too that the whole makeup of this area is quite different from the beginning of Sherbrooke East. It's too bad there's a truck blocking me because there is a nice mural of a driver right by the bus and a metro, so it would have been a way to kind of capture the transport of Montreal on a wall. So this part of Sherbrooke, I haven't really been around as much, but the character here is very different compared to the other parts I was on. There's a lot more shops, restaurants, boutiques, so it's a very commercial part of town. I feel like the closest comparison I could think of is if you're going on Taschereau Boulevard in Greenfield Park, St. Hubert, Brossard, it's kind of the general idea too. Although in that case, Brossard is technically an autoroute, so I guess I digress. Whether it's a street or an autoroute, it doesn't really make a difference. Sanctuary of Mary, Queen of Hearts, or Marie, Reine des Cœurs, if you want to speak it in French. It's definitely one of the more unique looking churches around here, but I find if you go east of La Petite Patrie, the architecture of the churches is definitely something that stands out. All right, and now I'm right by the Cadillac Metro. So one thing that's kind of useful is to know that all along the green line of the subway system here, the remaining lines, Cadillac, L'Angelier, Radisson, and Honoré-Beaugrand are actually all along Sherbrooke Street. So in case you're along the way here, then it's easy to just hop here and then head back into the center of the city. Hence why I was saying the transport is simple. Oh, Plaza Antique. Let me just get a shot of this. Yeah, this is familiar for me because I remember that during peak record collecting days for me and my brother, we did come here once because of a record convention. The record convention I probably covered last year on my channel. It's around the plateau, but one of the first ones that we visited was actually in this building. So it went all the way from the east end up to the center of Montreal, so it did change quite a bit of location. Giant inflatable Mario? Sure, why not? But it makes sense because there is a banco over here, which is kind of like a pawn shop where you could trade items for cash or even for gold. But I remember going here quite a bit because, or maybe not a bit, but I've gone to some of those around the city because there was a time you could get some decent video games at a relatively cheap price. But times have changed and now it's really a collector's market now, the same way you'd be collecting baseball cards. And actually, just over here is another one, content.com, which is like French for cash.com. Funny that these two things are still here to this day. What else is here? El Cid Bar, cocktail billiards. So I guess I could say once again that unlike the center of the city where I'm going to some trendy or I guess hipster bars, microbreweries, a lot of these seem like they're older style taverns that my dad, even my granddad would have visited. I don't know, maybe one day I'll pay one a visit, but I'll see if one catches my attention. Saint-François pub though, on Beauvais and Langelier, that's one of them I want to check. Centre Domaine, one of the smaller malls around here that I know I passed by a couple of times on my walks over the years, and on occasion I'd stop here in case I needed groceries or to check out a Walmart for a random thing. Now, I'm getting close to the Langelier metro station, which means I'm probably getting to the end of my walk, and Langelier is actually a nice way to kind of almost tie things together because if I was to go north, then I'll be heading my way into St. Leonard, showing off a bit of Bélanger Street just like I did on my video earlier in the year. If you want to see that episode, then I'll put a card in the top right corner. You can revisit that one because I do revisit some of my memories and some stories of me going into town with my dad and exploring the east end of Montreal. It was a fun one. Il est gourmand d'épicerie, but there's a whole bunch of Slavic writing I'm not too familiar with. So it looks like it's Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, like very Eastern European stuff. Interesting. I didn't think that that would be around here because it's almost like there's a lot more Ukrainian representation here than I realized compared to the older days. Oh, and they say there's a restaurant called Au Coq. I feel like that a lot more of those used to exist at times until Benny's had bought up a lot of the locations. So it's always rare to see Au Coq still standing alone. Okay, here we are, Radisson Street, which means if I was to go a little further north, eventually it'll become Boulevard des Galeries d'Anjou, and I'd be in the city of Anjou and looking at the Anjou Mall for the heck of it too. Right here is the Radisson Metro. So that means that I could take this and then head back into the city, or if I was ever adventurous, then that means I could always take the South Shore bus to go back into Boucherville. Because what that one does, it's like an express bus to go into Boucherville by the La Fontaine Tunnel. Because I always find out of all the cities in the South Shore region of, the suburbs of Montreal, that one always feels like it's a bit more detached compared to St. Hubert, Brossard, and etc. And it looks like that Sherbrooke becomes really busy around here. Not to say it wasn't busy because I was walking in rush hour traffic, but what I think is, today's going to be a good time to stop the walk over here and take a little breather in Place Versailles close by and head on home. What I could probably do one day is start my walk around here on Honoré Beaugrand and then check out Sherbrooke further into the east in Pointe-aux-Trembles just to show the neighborhood a little bit. But until then, thanks for watching this latest edition of the Wandering Ukie Cheese Café. So if you like what you see, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button below, give me a thumbs up if you enjoy the wanders, stories, and everything that comes with it. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, leave in the comments and I'll see what I could do. Till then, take care, see you next time, and enjoy the ride.